It's a tragedy we've seen repeatedly. The drowning of a child, most recently young learners Mzansi and Seboko. Families have been left devastated, and the public is asking what is being done to ensure their children's safety. I'm now joined by Kolisile Kumalo from Mzansi Scuba Diving Academy to talk about water safety. Koli, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We've seen a really horrible start to the 2020 academic year. 2 incidents, both involving drowning. What does this speak to when it comes to water safety precautions and measures that need to be put in place?
Good morning, Mpo, and good morning to our viewers at home. Thank you very much for having me. First, I would like to send my deepest sympathies and condolences to these families and other families that have suffered, tragedies, such as these ones. What I always recommend is that schools must have committees, committees that do oversight, committees that do vetting of, when you're going to go to camps, to go and do these activities. Because you've been doing this activity for the past 20, 30 years with the same service provider does not necessarily mean that it is safe. You have to be 100% sure and certain every time you have kids that are going to get into the water. Make sure that those kids are firstly supervised. Make sure that secondly, the kids have proper equipment to get into the water. Make sure that your people that are on standby are watching the kids all the time. Because supervision is very important when you are in the water. Mm-hmm. We do scuba diving. We get underwater. We go deep to depths of about 40, 50 meters at times. What we do all the time is we make sure that the number of kids that go in the water are the number of kids that get out of the water. It is very, very important. But starting with schools, establish these committees. That will make sure that whenever there's going to be a camp, whenever there's going to be a trip, these committees are going to go and do a proper vetting of the site to make sure that the site has got lifeguards, they've got equipment, they've got people that are trained in case of an emergency to provide CPR, to provide first aid. They must be able to monitor those activities all the time.
You speak about the importance of equipment.
Yes.
That needs to come with this safety measure. But we know, just looking at the Mzansi's case, the Parktown boys, where we're hearing of parents saying that they had to pay 800 Rand for these life jackets. In terms of such an imperative part of safety, whose responsibility is it really to provide a safety feature such as a life jacket?
It is tragic that you expect parents who in some cases don't even know, what is the requirement for your child to get underwater, and then you outsource that responsibility to parents. It was disturbing. I was quite disturbed to see that the narrative is now changing, focusing on the family. I think that was completely uncalled for. But if you are a center that is going to provide this type of activities, it's your responsibility to provide equipment. You can't outsource that to parents. When we get in the water, we make sure that our equipment functions, optimally. And we do what is called body checks all the time. Mm-hmm. You will check my equipment, I will check your equipment, to an extent of touching your equipment to make sure that it functions properly. Who provides that equipment? It's my school. It's my responsibility to make sure that I provide you with optimally functioning 100% equipment. That we would have checked. We would have checked that equipment to make sure that it's 100% safe. Mm. So that's why I'm saying the vetting of these activities must start at the school. If needs be, bring in professionals that will go to that venue to go and check and do a checklist, a proper, to make sure that all the protocols are followed. The kids are building a raft. There must be, life jackets before they get in the water. Before we as scuba divers get in the water, we do body checks. I don't know how many times. We do body checks when we are kitting up. We do body checks when we get in the water. We do body checks before we drop, going down to our dive sites. We do body checks all the time to make sure that the equipment is optimal. So it is your responsibility as a service provider to make sure that equipment is provided.
When it comes to the depth of the water and perhaps the stream and flow of the water, what safety precautions should have been taken there? Precisely
my point. You have these activities year in, year out. And we have seen in recent terms, the amount of torrential rains that we are getting. We're getting more rain than it's normal. I'm sure you've seen about what happened now recently in Centurion,
Absolutely.
In Durban, in Mamelodi, in all those areas. So you need to know, before you have kids, it's a basic protocol, a basic check. You know, what is the speed of the water? Will these kids be able to, are they capable of swimming? You know, that's the first thing that you'll check. If the water is, is moving at a particular rapid rate, what if they fall over that? You must have those scenarios all planned. You know, the depth of the water is something that you would know as a service provider. You should know that the water is this deep. And that information must be relayed to the parents. You know, when we dive, we always say that you have an opt-in or an opt-out. And I think the indemnity forms, in as much as you insist on people signing indemnity forms,
yes,
that opt-in, opt-out must be made compulsory. Kids should not be compelled to do activities that are comfortable with. Let me give you an example. We had a group of students, about 15, we went to Best Lake, and with our cultures, Mamlambo, the kids were afraid of the body of water. They said, we're not going to get into this water because this water looks like the typical water la Mamlambo Shalakon. We did not force those kids to get in the water. We had the equipment, we have done all the protocols, we didn't force them to get in the water. So there's a whole lot of things that needs to be done before you allow kids to get in the water. Importantly, are they capable of swimming? Can they swim? Can they survive in the water?
I want us to really turn to the death of Keamohetso Seboko. The death, lifeless body found floating in a swimming pool at a school. I mean, in terms of safety measures, when it comes to the swimming pool area, what are these measures that should automatically be in place at a school?
There must be a lifeguard. A swimming pool is the easiest place to monitor. There must be a lifeguard. If you go to municipal swimming pools, you find some of our kids they are trained as lifeguards, and they know what to do. They're monitoring the kids constantly. Supervision is important when it comes to water. You cannot put kids whom you know that are not capable of swimming next to a body of water and not supervise them. When for example, in our protocols, we have an instructor, we have a dive control specialist. In cases, 2 dive control specialists. And we limit the number of learners that get in the water to a maximum of 8. We don't exceed 8. So that there's always that constant supervision of your students underwater. It cannot be that you put kids in the water and then you don't know how many kids were in the water, and then you're scrambling to find information. You should be able to know upfront how many kids are in the water. There must be supervision, constant supervision. But importantly, you must have the people who can perform CPR.
Yeah.
Because these accidents do happen, and God forbid that they happen. But there must be a person that is able to see when a person is drowning, trained to see that the person is drowning, be able to provide CPR, be able to have, emergency numbers on standby. And those are the protocols that the professionals must provide to schools before they go on these camps.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight. The Mzansi Scuba Diving Academy Director, Kolisile Khumalo, really just talking about water safety in light of the tragedy that's unfolded right at the beginning of the 2020 academic year. We've seen 2 incidents already involving the drowning of young people at 13 years of age. Kolisile Khumalo emphasizing that supervision is the operative word here. We will continue to bring you more news and, of course, give you an update on stories that continue to develop throughout the local regions, internationally and across the continent. Stay tuned.